Hello and welcome to Wholistic Hounds 6 live webinar. My name is Morgan Fitzgerald and I'm a holistic dog groomer and animal Reiki practitioner from Cleveland, Ohio. Today we're going to be talking all about cooperative care and holistic dog grooming. So I'm going to start off by kind of defining what these terms mean and what they can be applied to. So the first term that we're going to talk about is cooperative care. When we're talking about cooperative care, we're talking about training and handling techniques that encourage the animal to be an active and willing participant. And so cooperative care can be applied to grooming and husbandry tasks. So this can include veterinarian visits and administering medication. And so the idea behind cooperative care is to use positive reinforcement training techniques to focus on cooperation with the animal. And so this can be very helpful for animals that display a little bit of fear or sensitivity when being handled or at the veterinarian's office, for example, or during grooming. And so the focus is on cooperation and allowing them to opt out of training or handling if things become too stressful. The idea behind cooperative care is, of course, cooperation, but it also teaches consent. And so cooperative care is one term that can be used when we're talking about this kind of animal care. But another term you might also hear is holistic grooming. And so this is specifically applies to the grooming process. And so some other words you might hear it called are consent-based grooming, gentle grooming, or sometimes it'll be called just positive grooming. And so a big facet of both cooperative care and holistic grooming is training. And the training that we use is positive reinforcement. So holistic dog grooming is a little bit different than traditional dog grooming. And the reason it's different is because in holistic dog grooming, we consider the dog as a whole. So we're looking at their physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual needs, and we're considering all of those during the grooming process. And so it's very much a mind, body, soul approach. In holistic dog grooming, we offer customized grooming plans for every single dog. So because every single dog is unique and has different sensitivities, in holistic dog grooming, every single grooming experience will be tailored to that specific dog. That means it's not a cookie cutter approach, and that we will approach every dog based on their comfort level and their history. If they have any trauma or sensitivities, we'll be mindful of that, and we will incorporate that into the grooming plan. And so, once again, as I mentioned before, we incorporate positive reinforcement training techniques. And I think one of the most important aspects of holistic grooming is that we cater to all dogs. And so this includes those with behavioral problems, grooming sensitivities, anxiety, trauma, medical issues, etc. And so holistic dog grooming, it's a step away from the traditional grooming salon because we focus on rehabilitating anxious and traumatized animals. So some of these animals might be traumatized with grooming, but some of them might just have generalized anxiety. And so we work at desensitizing using gradual exposure therapy and using counter conditioning. We will have later webinars where we talk more about positive reinforcement training and what these terms mean. So if you don't know what these terms mean, that's okay. And we will have the opportunity to talk a little bit more and learn a little bit more at a later time. Okay, so another thing that we offer that in holistic dog grooming is usually energy work or Reiki. So there is a little bit an energy component to it, and that really addresses the spiritual level of the animal. But not only that, we're also very well versed in body language, in behavior. And so in the traditional grooming curriculum, there is not much education on dog behavior and dog body language. And so a lot of that can be missed in the traditional grooming salon. So for example, dogs will display stress signals or calming signals when they're reaching their threshold. And for the untrained professional, these signals might be missed, and then that can lead to an escalation of behaviors, and that can lead to aggression, it can lead to bites, etc. And so in holistic dog grooming, we really focus on low stress handling techniques, incorporating Reiki healing and energy work into what we do. And we sometimes even delve into the realm of behavior modification. Now, that does depend on the qualifications of the holistic dog groomer, but in general, holistic dog groomers have a little bit more knowledge about behavior and how to manage dogs that may be anxious or overwhelmed. The other thing that's important to note about holistic dog grooming is since that we are usually rehabilitating anxious animals, we are less focused on styling. And so styling would be considered the aesthetic part of the grooming process. So making sure the dog is pristinely trimmed with a haircut. And so in holistic dog grooming, usually we're focusing on more anxious animals. And so we're focusing on building trust. And that's the foundation of any dog training and any relationship with any animal is trust. And so that's the foundation of holistic dog grooming is building trust with that animal so that they can feel more comfortable. And so then later on, we can kind of focus on those more of the styling, the aesthetic part of the grooming process once we have that dog to a level where they are comfortable and they feel safe. So as I mentioned, safety is extremely important. And so traditional dog groomers absolutely prioritize safety, but usually it's mostly about the groomer safety. So for example, in the traditional grooming salon, if a dog is a bite risk, the groomer applies usually a muzzle in order to keep themselves and the dog safe. And so sometimes putting a muzzle on a dog that is not muzzle trained and who is already anxious, it can actually make the problem worse. And so in holistic dog grooming, and specifically at Holistic Hounds, we believe less is more with restraints, especially when it comes to grooming anxious dogs. Now, if you are going to use restraints, it's appropriate to have them loose. And so I wanted to mention here about grooming loops because they are a tool that are commonly used in grooming salons. They are the loop that goes around the dog's neck and is attached to the grooming table. There are many instances of a groomer walking away and a dog either getting injured or even passing away because of um, choking themselves, essentially. And so in holistic dog grooming, we are mindful about using restraints and making sure, for one, that you never leave a dog unattended. But also here at Holistic Hounds, we don't really use grooming loops at all. And so instead, we're gonna teach. For example, we will teach mat protocol. So that's teaching the dog to stay in place while we're grooming them. And so that can be really helpful for safety because usually for safety, putting the restraints on the dog is usually more about keeping the groomer safe, but it doesn't always make the dog feel safe. And so sometimes adding more restraints can actually restrict the flow of emotions and energy, which can lead to an escalation of behaviors. And so, especially if you're not paying attention to the dog's body language, you might miss those calming signals. They might give a yawn or a lick lip, and that might be saying, "Hey, I need a break." And if you miss that break and they have the restraints on, it can be very problematic. And then you can have a dog that's either biting, thrashing, having a panic attack, etc. And so in holistic dog grooming, we're all about safety. We believe less is more with restraints. And we also largely believe in positively reinforcing any restraints that are used by desensitizing first. So for example, in holistic dog grooming, you might need to use a muzzle. But before you use a muzzle, in order to properly train it, you want to make sure you desensitize the muzzle to the dog. Another important factor could be the type of muzzle that we're using. And so in holistic dog grooming, we stay away from nylon or cloth muzzles because these are typically, it makes it hard for the dog to breathe. And so a basket muzzle, the brand Baskerville is a decent one to use, and it allows more pant room, and you can allow the dog to wear it for a longer period of time without having that breathing difficulty. And so that's another important thing is monitoring the animal's stress threshold throughout the whole process. Okay, and so we talked about safety, we talked about muzzle training. And so we use positive reinforcement training techniques. And so if you're not familiar with positive reinforcement training techniques, it's a reward-based training system that is used. It's not just used with dogs, but it's used with a variety of different animals. So it's used at zoos and that sort of thing as well. And so you're using something that the animal sees as high value. And so for a lot of dogs, that's food. And so that's a really good way of training them. And it also allows their emotional state to come down from that aroused state and to become a little bit more calm and relaxed. And so if a dog is overly aroused by food, then using a different type of reinforcer could be more appropriate. You can use simple praise. A lot of dogs are very responsive to just praising them. Sometimes play might be a good way to reinforce a dog in a positive way. And so the main factor in all of this is keeping the dog under their threshold. And so their threshold is really just their stress tolerance. And so we want to monitor these stress levels. And so we use the subjective unit of distress scale, or SUDS for short. And at Wholistic Hounds, we will monitor the dog's distress levels based on that scale. And so that we can kind of monitor our progress and we can make sure that we're keeping that dog under threshold. When a dog is under threshold, they can learn and they have the ability to retain new information. But when a dog is over their threshold, they are in a fight or flight response and their sympathetic nervous system is activated and they cannot focus on learning. And so that's why we want to keep the dog under their threshold during the whole process of grooming and training. And so that's extremely important. And that's kind of where holistic dog grooming is a little bit different than traditional, because we incorporate trust techniques and positive reinforcement training. Okay, so moving on, another important aspect of holistic dog grooming are the products that we use in the grooming salon. So a lot of the products that are typically used in conventional grooming salons are not always pet friendly, and they have these ingredients that are actually pretty toxic to these animals. And so because dogs are highly sensitive, it's essential to use organic and non-toxic grooming products with animals. And that includes shampoos, conditioners, it includes the cleaning products that you use, etc. Okay, and so that's another really important aspect of holistic dog grooming, is focusing on using organic, non-toxic products, shampoos, conditioners, etc. Okay, so why is a holistic approach necessary when it comes to dog grooming? And so the reason why a holistic approach is necessary when it comes to dog grooming is because dogs are very sensitive creatures. They are very intelligent and they are empathetic. They're also very in tune with their environment. And so ideally, holistic dog grooming focuses on setting a dog up for success by beginning positive reinforcement training with the grooming process in puppyhood. Now, we see that isn't always possible, and so you can start with these positive training techniques at any time, because the more that you do it at a younger age, the more you set your dog up for success. They get to be an active and willing participant of the process. And honestly, they can even have some fun doing it. We can incorporate games-based training that goes along with teaching desensitization and that sort of thing. It allows the animal to work at their pace, and it really allows them to have a say in what they're doing. And this increases cooperation in a large way, because the animal feels like if something becomes too stressful, that they have the option to say, let's stop and take a break. And animals really appreciate that, and they recognize that we're helping them. And so they're a lot more likely to cooperate. So taking a holistic approach is necessary because all dogs are different. All of their sensitivities are different. All of their past traumas are different. And so that's why a holistic approach is necessary, because we want to individualize the approach for every dog that's in our care. And so again, a holistic approach means mind, body, soul approach. And it means incorporating all of those in everything that we do. Okay, it's a lot of information. So the last thing that I wanted to talk about in regards to holistic dog grooming and how it differs from traditional grooming is that we offer trauma-informed care. And so trauma-informed care essentially is taking trauma into consideration when working with a sensitive animal. And so in holistic dog grooming, we often get a lot of the dogs that are turned away by traditional groomers. And this is usually because some level of trauma, and whether it's just a grooming trauma or it's something completely different, like the dog being attacked by another dog when they were younger, we take a trauma-informed approach. And so that's approaching the dog in a sensitive and compassionate and empathetic way, and recognize that they can have PTSD from previous grooming experiences. And this can actually be triggered during the grooming process, even if we are taking a holistic and positive and dog-centered approach. So we want to just be mindful of this. And trauma-informed care is something that is also offered in human healthcare as well. And so it's kind of branching out into animal care as well, which is extremely important. So a very important quality of a holistic dog groomer is trauma-informed care. So the idea behind trauma-informed care and holistic dog grooming is that we enhance the quality of care we provide. we minimize the risk of causing additional trauma, and we are aware of how our energy and our moods might affect a sensitive or traumatized animal. And so that's an extremely important part of holistic dog grooming is focusing on your own energy as well and managing that during the process, because dogs pick up on our energy and our thought waves. If we go into a grooming session with all this stress and anxiety, the dog is going to pick up on that and they're going to respond with stress and anxiety. And so a very important quality of a holistic dog groomer is the ability to maintain their own emotional, spiritual energy, because the dogs really feed off that. So if we come into it with a positive mindset and the mindset that we're going to stop when things become too stressful, the dog's going to respect that and they're going to cooperate, and their energy levels will also match ours, and we will begin to co-regulate in a positive way. Okay, so the last thing that we're going to talk about before we finish up, because we only have a couple more minutes, when grooming an anxious or traumatized dog, we might do things like enrichment, Reiki, or free work before we even start actual physical hands-on grooming. And so we might groom in multiple sessions, and we're going to offer lots of breaks. And we always want to end things on a positive note. And so these are some things that are a little bit different in holistic dog grooming than in traditional. All right, so we're getting close to the end here, and I want to just share a couple of resources with you guys if you guys are looking for more information on these topics. So if you're looking for a book on cooperative care, I would recommend the book. It's called Cooperative Care, 7 Steps to Stress-Free Husbandry, and that is by Deborah A. Jones, and you can find that on Amazon. The other one that I recommend highly would be Taking the Grr Out of the Grooming Salon by Sue Williamson, and she also has a puppy version and a version for guardians. Okay, and then the last one that I would recommend is Holistic Pet Grooming, and that's by Daryl Connor. And I can also put this information on our Facebook page as well for those of you that might not have gotten that. Okay, I appreciate you guys so much for showing up, and hopefully we will see you at the next webinar. Our next webinar is all about animal Reiki and energy healing, and so that's going to be a really fun session. So if you haven't registered, go on our Facebook page and you can go to the Livestorm app and you can sign up for that. If you have any questions, my name is Morgan. You can contact me either on Facebook or through our website. And if you need more information, you can visit www.holistichounds.dog, and that's holistic with a W. Thank you so much for tuning in today, and we hope to see you next time. Have a great day.